Ate a lot of chickpeas.
They ate a lot of free food. They didn't eat the chickpeas. Chickpeas were for throwing. I don't know when I ever ate a chickpea. I don't.
I had my first cherry tomato.
First year, yeah, the salad. Well, the salad thing was.
A lot of people ate free at Max's, and that was one of the main draws. I mean, you could.
Well, that's what I mean. You sign Patty Arbuckle on a check for steak, and you have eaten free. And it never got sent back saying you don't look like Patty Arbuckle. You have ID, Mr. Arbuckle. That never happened. You have Donald Duck. You know, it's very What? I don't know that story.
Whose story is that? Maybe it was Chamberlain. One day he was in Max's, and they had these very, very hard chickpeas that were hardly edible. They'd be all around, and people would throw them at each other. They'd scatter on the floor. So one day Taylor Mead tripped on the chickpeas, fell on his ass, and said, "I'm going to sue Mickey for everything I owe him." Because everybody owed him money, and he didn't collect. And that's how one of the reasons he had such a following for the people who he loved and were his friends, the artists and actors, musicians, and people we're talking about. Lou Reed says he survived off of eating the free food in Max's for years. It was that kind of place. Where are those places today?
I think we have 2 more questions.
Can you tell us, any one of you, a Bryce Martin little story or anything? And like Bryce Martin always talks about, or Helen Martin always talks about Max as being such a great place. Is there a story you have about either one of them?
No, it's not a story. It's just she was an extremely cool waitress, like all the waitresses. She had no hips, tits, and wore a little black top and a little black skirt, and was extremely cool and patient. And he was the hottest male heterosexual no, he wasn't alcoholic, a heterosexual artist, and he was doing just color field stuff, and it just was amazing with little drips at the bottom and acrylic on. It was just gorgeous. It was all gray. It's gorgeous. And they met and married, and now are one of New York's richest leading radical couples of all time. It's one of the great love stories. Yes, they are sublime leaders of the pack to this day, and they met at Max's.
Where did the club's name come from?
What?
Where did the club's name derived from?
You want to tell that story? What's your version of it? What's the name of Max's Kansas City?
I have no idea.
Well, the original story that everybody talks about is that Joel Oppenheimer, who's a poet, a good friend of Mickey's, and hung out in Mickey's earlier place, was there when they were setting up Max's. And I have to say, Frosty Myers, who's one of the great artists who hung out there and is very well represented in our show, designed Max's. He was Mickey's friend. He designed all of Mickey's restaurants after Max's as well, several locations. And he was an incredible designer. A lot of things that we take for granted, like artists, lamps made out of things found on the street and bound together and with neon and stuff. He invented those in some of these clubs. He had neon going through all kinds of fantastic design elements. So Frosty and Joel Oppenheimer and Neil Williams and a couple other people were brought to this place when Mickey was thinking of renting it. It was a nowhere southern soul food kind of place in the middle of nowhere. And they said, well, what's the name going to be if we open this joint? And Oppenheimer? Yeah, said Max's Kansas City. Oh, he wanted to make it a steak joint. It's going to be a steak joint. So he says it's going to be called Max's Kansas City because Max's is a cool name and Kansas City is where steaks come from. That's one version.
Another version that I heard is from Ishmael Reed, the black writer, who had taught at the Bowery Poetry Workshop with Joel. And Ishmael swears that one day Joel had told him that the reason it was called Max's Kansas City was because Joel's wife had left him, and when she called, he said, "Where are you?" And she said, with Max in Kansas City.
That story was published in the New York Times recently.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, no, Ishmael Reed wrote in when he heard about the show and told this story, but it does it make sense? Would you name a restaurant after the place?
No, nothing makes sense. It's like asking a group, why did you name yourselves this? You don't ask that. It's a creation. It's art. You don't ask Vicky why he named it that. It is that. Enough. Sausage.
That is a good place to end, because we've run out of time. Feel free to come up here for books, for signing, to talk, whatever you want.